not a jolly good time over in jolly old England. The Bills with a lot of trouble in this one. 25-20 instant reaction. Welcome to the Buffalo End Zone Podcast. I'm Kevin Carroll.
And I'm Andy Young, filling in for the vacationing Jon Scott, who did not make the trip to London either.
Yeah.
Either did the Bills today.
Yeah, he's not in London. The Bills didn't really show up to London until late, literally and figuratively when you look at the game, Andy. But the jumping off point, I think, we'll get to right off the bat. Injuries. Another star player on the Bills defense going down, even two. And, man, that just adds to the 25-20 loss. Last week with Trey White, come off a big win. This just piles up right now.
Absolutely. Matt Milano goes down with a lower leg and knee injury. Daquan Jones goes down with a pec injury. Sean McDermott after the game saying neither one looks good. Those could be long-term injuries, whether that's for the season. We don't know at this point. The Bills will do the evaluations when they get back to the States. But, boy, that really took the wind out of the Bills' defense's sails right from the start of this game. The offense didn't come out with any sort of energy. The defense was really trying to buoy itself because of all the injuries that they've dealt with so far this season. You look at Trey White being out, Greg Rousseau being out, Christian Benford being out, Shaq Lawson being out going into this game. Then you've got Von Miller coming back, but he's on a pitch count. And in the game, you lose Matt Milano, who probably is your best defensive player overall. Heart and soul kind of guy. You lose Daquan Jones, who's been your best defensive tackle, along with Ed Oliver, who's been pretty darn good too. Daquan Jones has been unblockable for most of this season. That really hurt the Bills when they're already depleted injury-wise, and then it showed late in the game when they just sort of ran out of gas.
Jones, you didn't see much as far as like a replay and what happened because it all happened at once. You know, Matt Milano, you see the slow-mo replay. You see him get bent back in a weird way, but he walks off. But then a little bit later on in the quarter, you see that he is indeed getting carted off to the locker room with a big cast on his right leg.
Not a good sign, and you hate to see a guy get bent back like that. And we're watching some of the post-game reaction from some of the reporters and some of the people over in London with the Bills, and it seems like the Bills players are not happy with the field surface there in Tottenham Stadium. It's a special turf surface that they have in Tottenham Stadium. The soccer team, the British football team there, plays on grass, which they roll out onto the field. Did that have anything to do with the injuries today? I'm not sure. Taron Johnson seemed to think, boy, his foot stuck at one point and bent back because of the turf. He was very upset after the game, reading some of the comments from some fellow reporters there. Yeah, just the injuries, tough, man. And it's 2 years in a row now that the Bills have really dealt with some brutal, brutal injuries, especially on the defensive side of the football.
I mean, it's football. You expect injuries, but my God, man. Over the last couple of seasons, while you're in this Super Bowl window with Josh Allen, to get blown these injuries like this for now 2 seasons in a row while they're trying to do something. Again,
it's 3 seasons in a row because Trey White dates back to the year before that.
So, I mean, I'm not saying the sky is falling. I'm not saying it's all over. I mean, we saw that defense after Milano and Jones leave. They really stepped it up. They actually kept the Bills in this game. Bend but don't break. A.J. Epinesa.
Monster.
Having such a good start to the season. And we all joked around after the Commanders game about his pick six and getting up. And you hear all the players say he bats balls down on a regular basis. And then that just snowball. It just keeps happening. It happened today. What was it, like 2 or 3 batted down balls, a strip sack, and a fumble recovery for him. The guy, you can't say he didn't leave it all out on the field. You saw him taking oxygen on the broadcast towards the end. That A.J. Epinesa and the like, those guys stepped up and really had the Bills in position had the offense had come to life a little bit earlier.
Yeah, A.J. Epinesa, who's in the final year of his contract at this point, is really having a great season. I mean, he's racking up some sacks. Seems like every week, like you said, he bats down 2 or 3 passes from the opposing quarterback. Had one that he returned for a touchdown. I mean, boy, stepping up talk about that, especially with Von Miller on a pitch count, with Greg Rousseau not in, with Shaq Lawson not in, with Leonard Floyd dealing with some nagging issues and seemingly going out of the game a little bit here and there almost every week. A.J. Epinesa has really stepped up. Other guys stepped up too. I think Terrell Bernard played a pretty good game. I think Ed Oliver again played a pretty good game. You'd like to see a little bit more out of Kaiir Elam.
Well, Kaiir Elam was picked on a lot during this game. With Christian Benford out, obviously Trey White out. You know, when you hear the inactives and you saw Benford's name on the inactive dealing with a shoulder injury, you knew Kaiir Elam, who had been a healthy scratch for the first 4 games. We all figured he'd be called up in this one, but really called into action and really did not deliver. Like, we watched the game and next to each other, and I said to you on like one of the first couple of plays that Elam in man-to-man coverage looked the first couple of plays, he was on the receiver. But then it just kind of fell apart kind of after that as the game unfolded. It seemed like Trevor Lawrence was just, okay, where's Kaiir Elam out there? I'm going after him.
And it seemed like he took a tough matchup a lot of times in facing Calvin Ridley, who is just a fantastic route runner. And he's one of the best in the league, along with a guy like Diggs, about quickly getting in and out of his breaks and almost being able to stop on a dime. And it seemed like in the later stages of this game, they continuously attacked Elam with Ridley, and Elam just wasn't able to make the plays. Now, Ridley had a nice catch against Micah Hyde, too, so it's not just Kaiir Elam who's to blame here. But I don't want to get too far down the road of blaming the defense again because, like you said earlier, they really kept the Bills in this game when the offense wasn't pulling its part of the load.
We hear from players like Josh Allen, head coach Sean McDermott. One of the questions with this game and out there is the team deciding to leave after practice on Thursday, fly over to London, get a couple of practices over in London, and then have the game. And your eye test is that offense looked sluggish. That offense looked like they just weren't on the same level as the Jaguars, who had been out there all week, or even 2 weeks at this point, as far as being acclimated to the time change and the fact that your body's telling you it's a 9:30 in the morning game over there. There's might be something to say that maybe leaving so late actually didn't work out for them because it took them a while. And then when they woke up, the offense looked like the offense, and Josh Allen looked like the Josh Allen we're used to during pregame. The NFL Network even referenced the fact that Stephon Diggs called Josh Allen a sleepyhead or something towards that effect because he didn't get good rest on the flight going over.
Yeah, Josh said he didn't get good sleep and he was caffeined out on Friday in London when he talked to the media there. I want to run down the list of the Bills' drives in this game. Punt, 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 touchdown, end of half. Punt, punt, interception, that's the deep one to Diggs where he's trying to get the Bills back in the game. Touchdown, touchdown, then the fumble on the attempted hook and lateral play there late in the game. So just not good enough. Like, they were sleepwalking to start this game. Sean McDermott said it. Just did not like the energy that the offense in particular, maybe the team overall, but we saw it, the offense in particular, came out with. I think Stephon Diggs and some of the comments I've seen from reporters on Twitter called it lackadaisical start for the offense. You said it was sluggish. It absolutely was all of those things. And it's going to call into question. Now, when's the next time the Bills play in London, overseas? Who knows? But the NFL is doing more and more of this, sending teams overseas. We've got games in Germany now. There's been games in Mexico City. So, it's something to look into and think about. And Sean McDermott said it, hey, we're going to have to evaluate everything because obviously something didn't work this week. They didn't come out ready to play, especially offensively.
Madagascar, too. Von Miller said Bills Mafia would travel to Madagascar. The Bills crowd there, Bills Mafia, it was a scheduled Bills home game, and it looked and sounded exactly like a Bills home game other than the offense not showing up early in this one. And a lot going into Play calling, the play calling to me was mind-numbing in the first quarter. I mean, no first down at all in the first quarter of this game. It was predictable. It seemed like if you were on Jacksonville, you knew what they were going to do. Try and run the ball with James Cook. Try for a quick pass. We'll get into this more with you because you're the one who brought up to me about using the middle of the field. But early, it seemed like all quick outs to get you 5 yards. But the players weren't getting separation and getting around the defenders. I brought it up to John numerous times already this season that I'm so sick of those plays in the NFL. I mean, when they work, they look great, like the flare out to the running back or the quick out to the wide receiver who has to beat a man. It's just this team, it doesn't work for them.
Mm-hmm.
So stop doing it. It's not working. It's like, you learn that at whatever level of high school football, be it high school or Pop Warner, if it's not working, stop doing it.
I think part of the issue today was the Bills have done such a good job this season being balanced. And we talked about Josh taking what the defense gives him. And that's been successful so far this season outside of the Jets game, right? The running game had been established, and people have made a big deal about that being a big part of the key to the success and taking some of the burden off of Josh Allen. Well, today, they run the ball for a net of 29 yards. Josh is their best runner, 14 yards. James Cook, who'd been top 5, top 10 in rushing yards this season coming in, rushes for -4 yards. Obviously, something wasn't going right up front, whether that's them being out physicaled or the scheme, whatever it was, wasn't working, and that leads to problems for the rest of the Bills' offense. Now, there's the segment of people out there that say, let Josh cook, don't worry about the run. But I feel like the fandom and people are talking about both sides of their mouths right now because, oh, wow, this team's doing so much better because they have balance. One game they don't. Allen throws for 357, and they struggle. So I don't know what the answer is there. But they've got to. You brought it up. They've got to do a better job getting Kincaid involved. I mean, he was basically invisible in this game.
Yeah.
Dawson Knox had a drop. Gabe Davis had a drop. They made some big plays down the field later in the game, but it took them so long to get started. And you're right. Some of the play calling is bizarre, and you're gonna live with some of that. They're gonna try some things that just don't work. But overall, just not a good performance from the offense, despite some gaudy stats with over 350 for Josh and 2 100-yard receivers. But a lot of that's in garbage time when they're playing catch-up in the last 7-8 minutes of the fourth quarter.
That's why I'm not a big box score stat guy. I mean, you can go back and look at stats at the end of the year, and you would have to circle a game like this and say, okay, yeah,
like
Josh Allen did that. Like, the numbers don't lie. Whatever that ESPN segment was, numbers don't lie. They kind of lie in this situation.
Right. Who played better today, Lawrence or Allen?
Right, because you look at the box score, and they played the same, and the score was close at the end of the day. But if you watched that entire game, it just wasn't the case.
Right. And I think here's another thing. I mentioned it. The receivers let them down a couple of times. They had trouble finding the easy way out kind of stuff. And penalties, boy, they really killed a couple of drives too, as far as holding calls and things like that. Some of that's on the refs. That was a horribly officiated game.
Yeah.
Way over-officiated. Way too many yellow flags on the field. But some of those are on the Bills, and they got to be better in those cases too.
Right. And that's the thing when you go back to this game. Injuries, offense very slow to start, officials and flags just kind of getting in the way of a game that is a good game. Now, like I said during the show, you don't want to be one of those guys who are like, well, the Bills were playing against the Jaguars and the refs. I mean, it's the NFL. Week after week, things happen, and at the end of the season, it usually evens out. But I get the frustration sitting there, and you look down for a second at your phone, and you look up at the TV, and there's a flag thrown. You see the little flag thing in the corner of your TV, and I get the frustration, and some of them were questionable. I mean, the one called on Jordan Poyer in the second half, I mean, that was such a bang. But I get it. that defenseless wide receiver and whatnot, but it was such a bang-bang play, and the ball and Poyer both basically arrived at the same time.
Yeah, and the ball was tipped. Poyer went low. He wasn't trying to hit the guy in the head or spear him or anything like that.
Right.
The guy dropped his pad level. He went down to try to get the ball after it was tipped. So what's Jordan supposed to do? It's a penalty either way, and the Bills have had those calls go their way too over the years. The Bills got a roughing the passer call for them against Josh Allen on Josh Allen, right? A little bit of a hit to the head, but, when we played football, that's a clean hit, right?
Exactly, Andy.
That's a good hit.
Yeah.
Let's look at the stats. 11 penalties for the Bills, 109 yards. 8 penalties for the Jaguars, but just 56. So twice as many penalty yards for the Bills. Still, almost 20 penalties in this game. I mean, it's just bad football to watch.
Yeah, it seems a bit much, and it dragged the game along, too. Hoping for like a 12:30 finish to this one. That was not the case with an early morning kickoff. But, yeah, I get the frustration from Bills fans watching it because that's where you see Bills Mafia on Twitter complaining constantly about the flags. I get it, but it happens. It's the NFL. I mean, what are you going to do? Josh Allen could have just played better in the first half.
Bills were 5 of 12 on third downs. Jacksonville was 10 of 18. That's in part your story.
Yeah, and that's big right there. And you're right. Despite that mad dash at the end of the game by the Bills offense, I mean, those were all big plays. Josh tried for a number of big plays throughout the game. You had Stephon Diggs wide open. He hit him once, but he underthrew him. Diggs had to come back, get the ball, go to the ground. Almost same exact play. If Allen has the ball a little ahead of Diggs,
he goes for 6.
It's a catch. It's a touchdown. Instead, the second one, an interception because Diggs couldn't muscle the ball away on another deep one downfield.
So it's a 60-minute game, and you can't just discount stats that happen late in the game because, say, a miracle happens and they get the onside kick and go down and score and win the game.
Which they almost did.
Right, it all counts. But let's go back to 7:44 left in the game. Bills are down 18-7 after ETN scores, right?
Yeah.
And Jacksonville had a 27-10 advantage in first downs, 396 yards to 220 in total yards. 150 to 28 in net rushing yards, and the time of possession was roughly double for Jacksonville of 35 to 17. Jacksonville offensively dominated that football game for the most part. Bills put up some stats late, but that tells you exactly what the story was. The Bills could not get out of their own way, especially early, and just didn't have enough late.
Right, and the defense was bend, don't break for most of the game. Excuse me. But when they had to come up big, when it became a game late in the fourth, the Jaguars marched down the field, and A.J. Epinesa wasn't there to bat a ball down. Ed Oliver wasn't there to come up with a big sack to force a field goal. Instead, it was ATN running into the end zone.
Yeah, I mean, they just didn't have anything left, right?
And that's when I said you saw Epinesa. They kept cutting to him, taking oxygen on the sideline. I mean, the dude balled out, and at the end, he and the rest of his unit, you could tell just the energy just wasn't there anymore.
Yeah, I mean, this is a case where the Bills' offense just had an off game, and they didn't have enough. Like in the Miami game, the Bills' offense kept the Bills in the game because remember in that Miami game, the Dolphins scored on their first 2 possessions.
Mm-hmm.
The Bills were able to keep pace and make it 14-14 at the end of the first quarter. We thought, hey, this is going to be a track meet. Bills' defense settles down, and the offense continues to roll. It's kind of the opposite this game. The Bills' defense really keeps the Bills in the game. Offense just doesn't have quite enough, right, to make it happen.
And you look at the offense, and we talk about other guys catching passes from Josh Allen other than Diggs. I mean, I think we've seen more and more lately. Gabe Davis getting more thrown his way and Diggs still getting his. But I'm a big Dawson Knox guy. I mean, I know he's been battling through injury, but he seems non-existent at times in games. You go out and you get Dalton Kincaid, a big tight end to work the middle of the field, and it's just not there. I think he had 1 catch. He might have had 2, Kincaid, and they were both towards the sideline.
Kincaid had 2 catches on 2 targets for 19 yards. Rough game for Dawson Knox, and I love me some Dawson Knox. Great guy. I think he's a really good player, too. One of those heart and soul kind of players. But 3 catches, 6 targets, right? And, that's not all his fault. Some of that's on Josh, too, but only 17 yards. Gabe had a decent game, but beyond Gabe and Steph, wasn't a whole lot going on there, and that's an issue, right? Like, you got to be able to spread the ball a little bit more. Hardy had the big play late, picked up like 40, 45 yards. Otherwise, he's got 1 catch for like 17 yards in the game. They've got to get Hardy more involved. They've got to get Sherfield more involved. And they've got to get both tight ends more involved. I think that's something that they really need to figure out. Now, is that on Josh? Is he just not looking their way? Is he not completing passes to them when he has a chance? Is that on Dorsey in the play call? Are the defenses squeezing the middle of the field to keep those things from happening? But you remember when the Bills' offense is clicking at its best, and they've been really good this season. Don't get it twisted.
Right.
But in those past years, say like 2020, they were always able to find something with like Cole Beasley over the middle, or Knox would make a big play. They just really haven't had a whole lot of that in the middle of the field, and that makes it tough when you're basically playing thirds on the outside.
Yeah, and it didn't look like Josh Allen was rushed that much. I think the O-line did a decent job.
They did okay. He was running for his life a couple of times, but not terrible.
But I will say this. This was the first time this season rookie Osiris Torrance saw him kind of look like a rookie out there at times, and I think he had at least 2 penalties.
There were back-to-back, I think, holding calls against him.
Where, normally you just don't hear his name, and he's done a solid job in his rookie season, but like even hearing his name, you're like, well, that's not something we've been really hearing, that he's screwing up.
Offensively, they'll be okay. This isn't something that like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, like you said earlier. It's one of those games where they just were off, whether that was London and flying and the trip and all those sorts of things, whether that was just a random slow start, whether that was play calling or receivers or Josh. It's one of those games where they just didn't have it. What's more concerning, big picture, is the defense, who played great given the circumstances, but my gosh, are they undermanned right now?
Yeah, and this was just week 5, Andy.
Right.
There's still a lot of football to be played, and you do get Von Miller back now, who was on a pitch count. I think anyone who covers the team regularly did not think we were going to see a ton from Von Miller out in this one. As I point out in the show, NFL Network kind of
They didn't bring their A game either.
Yeah, the misleading, we see Von Miller with a hat on walking up and down the sidelines, and you hear Rich Eisen doing the play-by-play go, oh, God, no, that's not good. And it's like, you and I look at each other like, well, I think he's just done for the day.
Right.
I mean, you're not going to have Von Miller have a setback week 5 against the Jaguars in London because he's just coming back from injury. He played the first half. You saw him here and there. He didn't do much. And he looked to me like a preseason game. Guy puts his ball cap on, stands on the sidelines because he's a starter and he's not playing anymore.
And if their secondary is going to be as undermanned as it is right now, and they're going to lose Matt Milano, who's a great coverage linebacker, they're going to need all the pass rushers they can get, right? They need Von Miller down the stretch of this season. Rousseau's hurt. We'll see what happens with him.
That Taron Johnson scare was like, golly, man, you look at that. I mean, if they have an issue, at least you had Taron Johnson. You had Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer. You hope Christian Benford, his shoulder heals up quick and they're able to do some stuff. But, man, oh, man, Taron Johnson in the replay looked horrible when they showed it. But then you see him jogging back and forth, and he re-entered the game.
Yeah, that was tough, and that was scary for Bills fans. And shout out to our pal Mike Catalana, the sports director over at 13 in Rochester, who put up a quote from Marv Levy that said, "Depth is great until you have to use it." Love that quote.
Uh-huh.
And it's going to be tested here for the Bills because they're going to have some unproven guys. They're going to have to step in some big roles, and maybe Brandon Beane has to get on the phone and make some moves to add some more depth, because
I would think
it's
something
thin right
has
now.
to happen before the trade deadline. They have to get other veteran bodies.
Some cornerback help, maybe some linebacker help. We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see as it plays out. And panic button, Andy, as we said, don't hit it, don't need it.
Throw it in the other room.
Yep.
They're 3-2.
Bad
It
game.
happens.
I'm sure, this is immediately after the game and the post game, and maybe some people are, quote, taking a nap, unquote. We'll wake up a little bit later on in the afternoon, watch some late football action, and then get their mind off of it. Because then you move on, Andy. You go from playing at 9:30 in the morning our time over in London to now you have a Giants team that's looked horrible coming to Buffalo for a prime time game at 8:20 at night on a Sunday coming up in week 6. I mean, it's the NFL. Anything can happen, and I don't know what is exactly going on with the Giants, but, Brian Daboll's return to Western New York will be a headline, but it kind of feels like this might just be what the Bills need for like a bounce back game.
Yeah, this really looking ahead to next week could be a get right game for the Bills. Let's get the offense cooking again, right? Let's get the running game established again. Get your bearings. Come back home, Bills. Get some sleep. Look at the film. Settle back into a normal routine. Get that figured out. And then figure out what you're doing on defense with as many injuries as there are, and get those guys up to speed that you need to. But it is an opportunity for them to bounce back and get to 4-2. And it's a long season.
Yeah.
Nobody's perfect out there, and you're going to have days like this, especially when injuries happen and you're fighting against it with your offense. It just happens sometimes.
And I had the feeling going into this that
we both said it.
Yeah.
It felt like a tough kind of game for the Bills.
like the such an emotional win over the Dolphins, the AFC East win, and then going over to another. It just, you talk about a get-right game. That was it doesn't feel right type of game that this doesn't feel like something that's going to, injuries aside, no one foresees injuries coming up. But it is interesting where they're at right now and what they're going to do, because you look around the NFL right now, Andy, and I think you and I talked about this before. Maybe you have 4 teams in the AFC, 4 in the NFC that are really competing for a run at a Super Bowl right now. The rest of them all look like dog crap.
Yeah. The football hasn't been great throughout this season. You've had some good games here and there. You've had a lot of bad games, too. Like I said, I think there's probably 8-ish teams. I mean, in the NFC, you're talking San Francisco. You're talking the Cowboys. You're talking the Eagles. I don't know who else you want to throw into that mix. Maybe Seattle.
See, Geno Smith and Seattle, I just
Right.
don't see them as a threat as long as Geno Smith is there.
Right, and then the AFC, obviously we think the Bills are pretty good, although it didn't look like that
Bills,
today.
Dolphins, Chiefs, Ravens,
and if Cincinnati can get right, I don't know what's going on with them and Joe Burrow.
Right.
But if they get right, obviously they're good, and even like the Chargers can be good. They always charger, but they can be good. So I mean, that's what, 8 or 9 teams that you think are legitimate competitors for a Super Bowl. It just, it's a long season. It's a slog. It's tough. You hate to fall down to 3-2 and fall back in the division again, but a lot of time to make that ground up.
Yeah, it's just, if you stop and think about where we are on the calendar, it's the beginning of October still. There's a lot left.
Feels like they've already played a season again with everything that's happened.
I know. It's like
crazy.
It just doesn't stop, like
Right.
we said. So you got the Bills. You got Bills hosting the Giants Sunday Night Football coming up. That was a game earlier. Hope would get flexed. Staying up late for a Bills-Giants game might not be that much fun, but it is what it is at this point, Andy.
It's going to be trouble for you down the stretch here because I don't think they play another 1 o'clock Sunday game
I think it's just the Patriots.
till
Both
the
games against
till the end of the
Patriots.
year. Right. Yeah. So get ready for those 4:25s, for those 8:30s, all kinds of no more 9:30 a.m.s. Thank God for that.
Yeah, I'm good with that. All right, we're going to check out again. Bills now 3-2 on the season. Have the Giants up next Sunday Night Football. For Andy Young, I'm Kevin Carroll. Thanks as always for tuning in.